Medical interest started with my grandfather, Harold Hill, a pharmacist who provided medicines and advice to his clients. My mother, Marilyn Hill Harper, practiced anesthesiology, spending her days ensuring that surgical patients move safely through their procedures to recovery. My first cousin, Joe Pinkney, is a family practice physician who directs a clinic for underserved populations in North Carolina. From all these health-oriented relatives, I learned that a series of steps is required to facilitate healing, and I adapted these strategies to wealth management. These are the wealth cure stages: diagnose, treat, comply, maintain, thrive. So you see what I did there? This is the idea of, I had an illness. I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. I was in Atlanta shooting for Colored Girls during hiatus of CSI New York last summer. Did you all see For Colored Girls? Yes. I was the one good brother in the movie. A lot of bad brothers in the movie. Oh my God. But I didn't write it, don't blame me. But as I was shooting that movie, we shot the exteriors here in New York, and we shot the interiors in Atlanta on the Tyler Perry stages. And one day I woke up, I couldn't swallow. I knew I wasn't sick. I knew something was wrong. And I had a friend who was so interesting who I did a show years ago, and if you guys saw it, it was on the first show I did on CBS called City of Angels. Blair Underwood, Vivica Fox, myself, Gabrielle Union, Viola Davis was on that show. Octavia Spencer was on that show. If you remember correctly, it's an incredible cast. Did that show, and I to do research for that show, I followed around young surgical residents. And at that time, King Drew was the #1 trauma hospital in the country. Unfortunately, because of all the gang violence happening in LA, they got more gunshot victims than any hospital in the country. In fact, the Army would send their doctors to King Drew to study how to deal with gunshot wounds, etc., because so many young brothers will come across the table. So I went to King Drew to study and follow around this doctor named Romeo Massoud. They told me he was the superstar young resident. And I followed him around and sat in some surgeries. He let me hold a couple gallbladders and some things. And he and I became friends. And little did I know that many years later, I'd be in Atlanta. He would be running a trauma surgery practice in Gwinnett Hospital in Atlanta. And I'd be calling him up one day saying, "Romeo, I think something's wrong, man. Do you know a good doctor that you can refer me to?" He referred me to this brother in Atlanta, an endocrinologist. They stuck 16 needles in my neck. They did a fine needle biopsy. And what was so interesting is that when I found out I had cancer, when I realized that it was not a good prognosis, was actually when I went back to get my results. Go into a hospital in Atlanta, you joke with the nurses and take pictures. They want to take pictures with you, and we hang out, have fun, joke. That's when I got the test. Came back the next week, everybody was deadly serious with me. And I was like, as soon as I walked in, I said, "Ooh, something's wrong." They were like, "Mr. Harper, you're a 103. I'm like, "No pictures." So I knew something was up. And I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. My father, who has died of cancer. My uncle Frank, who I referred to, died of cancer. My grandfather, who I just referred to, Harry Harper, died of cancer. So it was pretty serious. My father actually had the exact same thyroid condition, I think around the same age as I did. So it was something obviously I wanted to look into. Now, the curative stages that I just read, diagnose, treat, comply, maintain, thrive, somehow to me seem to apply to this idea of wealth cure. The first step in assessing the health of your wealth is to do what you would do with your body. Get a physical. Have it checked out to make sure everything is working as it should at its optimal level. For most of us, there's bound to be something that needs adjusting, either minor or major. A diagnosis of your physical health is the first step on the road to a wealth cure. Any diagnosis should be followed by a second opinion to help develop treatment options, which, when it comes to health, there are many experts, all with different sets of experiences, with different perspectives. It's true with money too, maybe even more true. Everyone you know, from your brother-in-law's financial advisor to your mother, has something to say about money. Not all of it is right or good for you, but sorting through their perspectives and pulling together a team you trust is a must for long-term financial health. Once you've gathered all the information you need, the next step is compliance with the treatment plan. It's one thing to buy that treadmill. It's another thing to get on it every day and work on your cardiac health. You need to comply with the plan. And so it is with your financial health. Having a great plan isn't worth much if you don't stick to it. Anyone who's worked to lose that extra 20 pounds will tell you they feel great once they've hit their goal. They'll also probably tell you that staying at that target weight takes much more effort than just getting there. Paring back your credit card debt is a great way to cut your expenses and get your financial ship righted. The hard part is resisting the temptation to run up that next bill now that you're out from under that cloud of debt. So maintaining your health and wealth is vital to long-term well-being, whether physical or financial. Ultimately, all of this is to thrive and survive. I continue. I give speeches all over this country, and many of the people I speak with these days say they feel exhausted, overwhelmed, and even defeated when it comes to money and personal finance. Why are so many people discouraged? Is it the decimated real estate market? Is it the financial meltdown that erased life savings? Or is it taxes, the deficit, health care premiums, rent or mortgage payments, high unemployment, or credit card debt? Most important question is, do we have the education and tools to effectively manage our money and our life choices? On the macro level, many are frustrated because our government seems to stand idly by and allow a massive economic meltdown, causing the worst job losses and recession since the Great Depression. And although both government and businesses were wildly irresponsible, no one appeared to be appropriately punished, and it was back to business as usual. On the micro level, many are suffering right now with the aftermath of that recession. Scores of individuals have overextended themselves with oppressive credit card and mortgage debt. Debt issues cause a huge amount of stress, particularly in an uncertain job market. Problems with debt can poison every aspect of our lives. The number one thing that couples argue about is, you guessed it, money. Beginning around 1980, our values, and here's a great data point, beginning around 1980, our values began to shift in catastrophic ways. I have a sincere belief that when we look back at our country where things started in many ways to turn, we can really point towards 1980. Taking so much money out of the public education system, starting to rob our children, increasing our personal debt load. Our values began to shift in catastrophic ways. Credit card use expanded rapidly, resulting in exploding personal debt that rose from $355 billion in 1980 to $2.6 trillion in 2008. Financial institutions collect billions of dollars in credit card, debit card, and late fees because we spend more than we have. And to make matters worse, while personal debt is exploding, savings have plummeted. The savings rate is 7 times lower in 2008 than it was in 1980. Our society has become steeped in hyper-consumerism. Advertising and the pressure it creates to own the latest model and name brand have led us to believe that acquisition is the only representation of abundance. As a result, we are buying more and more and attaching an elevated importance to these items. The irony is not lost on me that my paycheck from CSI New York is due to those same advertisers that buy time on our show that push you product. I just ad-libbed that. Through pop culture, we are bombarded with the message that cash is king. We even turn on a sports report, we hear more about the players' salaries and contract disputes than their performance on the field. At times, ESPN sounds more like CNBC. It reminds me of how I used to sway to Wu-Tang's anthem, "Cream, cash rules everything around me." Many of the problems we have witnessed in the world during the last number of years are a result of people chasing money at all costs, looking for quick, easy gains, even at the expense of their own morals and integrity. Rather than coming up with new ideas, products, and services, many individuals and businesses just focus on creating new schemes. We devote our energy to devising intricate plans for how to separate other people from their money. We have placed such a disproportionate value on wealth that we have made it acceptable to take other people's money if we're clever enough to trick it out of them. This attitude seems to be, what's the least we can provide, yet charge the most for. I often hear elders talking about the good old days before predatory lenders, hedge funds, derivative contracts, and house flippers. That's selective memory. The original Ponzi scheme happened back in the 1920s, and snake oil salesmen were defrauding folks decades before Mr. Ponzi. But the recent real estate crisis created predatory lending practices, and problems on Wall Street exacerbated by credit default swaps were considered to be more than A-OK. In fact, they were rated AAA.